Today, we're diving into something really cool. The Porunai River civilization. You know, you sent over a ton of research on this ancient Tamil civilization. Articles, government publications, the whole works. So we're going to take a deep dive into it all.
It's fascinating stuff. It's not just any river civilization we're talking about here.
Okay, so spill the beans. What makes the Porunai River civilization so special? What's got you all fired up about it?
Well, picture this. The Porunai River, flowing through Tamil Nadu in India, it's described as like a flowing river of gold by this poet, Kamban. And along its banks, you have these incredible archaeological sites. Korkai, Adichanallur, Sivagalai, they're like keys to unlocking the mysteries of this ancient culture.
Ooh, those names are ringing a bell from all that research you sent. Korkai, I remember that one. It was a pretty important city back in the day, right?
Yeah, it was the capital of the early Pandyan dynasty during the Sangam era, like centuries ago.
The Sangam era.
Basically a golden age for Tamil literature and culture.
Gotcha. So we're talking about a real power center then, huh?
Oh, absolutely. This kingdom was known for its power, wealth, and influence. There's this epic Silapathikaram that even describes the Pandyas conquering the north and ruling the south.
Wow, conquering the north and ruling the south, they were a force to be reckoned with.
Totally. And here's a kicker. Korkai was famous far beyond India. Like even Greek and Roman authors, guys like Pliny and Ptolemy, they mentioned Korkai in their writings.
No way. Ancient Tamil kings rubbing elbows with Romans and Egyptians. That's wild. What were they trading? Like spices, textiles, gold maybe?
Probably a mix of everything. We know pearls were a major export. Korkai was famous for pearl diving. Spices, textiles, precious stones, you name it, they probably traded it.
So a global marketplace right there on the Korunai River.
Exactly. A melting pot of cultures and a hub of activity.
This is already blowing my mind. You mentioned a few other sites along the river.
Oh yeah, like Adichanallur, a huge burial site. One of the largest in India, actually.
Yeah.
And the things they found there, it's breathtaking.
Okay, you got to give me the scoop. Ancient burials, what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Imagine this, a massive burial mound, 114 acres. They call it Parambu. And inside, they found gold diadems, some with these intricate dotted patterns, bronze stuff like bowls and plates, iron weapons, swords, daggers, even lances.
Whoa, gold diadems. Sounds fancy. They weren't just farmers chilling by the river, huh?
Nope. They were warriors, artisans, and clearly they had a taste for the finer things in life.
So a complex society, maybe even a hierarchy. Were those diadems just for show, or did they have a deeper meaning?
Probably both. Like, similar diadems have been found in other ancient civilizations, often associated with royalty or deities.
Makes me think of those Egyptian pharaohs with their crazy headdresses. So maybe we're talking about complex beliefs here, rituals, ceremonies. What about those other artifacts, the bronze and iron ones?
Well, the bronze pieces seem to be mostly domestic stuff. Bowls, plates, containers, all beautifully crafted. Shows they were pretty skilled with metalworking, which would have been essential back then.
Everyday necessities, but elevated, huh?
Yeah. And then there's the iron artifacts. Those are more practical and kind of scary. Weapons and tools for hunting, war, farming, you know.
So they had their peaceful side, but they were ready for a fight if they had to.
Right. And here's another twist. They found female figurines in these burials, similar to ones found in the Indus Valley civilization.
Whoa, wait, the Indus Valley civilization? That's way up north. Are we talking about some kind of ancient connection here?
Maybe. It points to a possible link. A shared cultural element spanning thousands of miles. Pretty cool, huh?
Absolutely. It's like these ancient cultures were talking to each other across huge distances. What did those figurines look like?
They depict women, often stylized, with big hips and fancy hairstyles. Some even have jewelry, like little echoes of the actual ornaments they found.
So we're seeing reflections of their own society in these little figurines. It makes you wonder, what did they represent to them? Goddesses, fertility symbols, decorations.
We don't know for sure, but it's fun to imagine. And it's fascinating how these figurines connect them to a civilization so far away. But maybe the pottery can give us some more clues.
You mentioned pottery earlier. What was their style like?
It's pretty unique, mostly black and red ware, which means they fired the clay to get this striking black and red color combination.
I've seen pictures of that style. It's really beautiful. How did they get those two colors on one pot? Magic.
Pretty close. They controlled the oxygen flow during firing. So certain parts turned black, while others stayed red.
So like a super controlled oxidation thing. And did they just make plain pots or did they get fancy with it?
Oh, they got fancy. Some have carved designs, geometric patterns, even extra decorations stuck on.
Yeah.
They use different tools too, like combs, shells to add textures and patterns.
So it was art meeting function. They wanted their everyday objects to be beautiful too.
Exactly. Speaking of everyday objects, the animal figurines they found are really interesting too.
Oh yeah. Tell me about those little creatures. What kind of animals did they make?
It's like a whole zoo. Buffalo, goats, cows, even those humped bulls you see in Indus Valley civilization art. And then wild animals too, like tigers, elephants, deer.
It's like a snapshot of their world, frozen in time. Were the figurines realistic or more like symbolic?
It depended. Some are super detailed, anatomically correct. Others are more abstract, focused on capturing the essence of the animal, you know.
Like those ancient cave paintings, maybe, where the meaning was more important than perfect realism? What do you think they used those figurines for?
Could have been toys, decorations, maybe even religious objects. Who knows? Maybe they thought those animals had spiritual power. But the jewelry they found, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, let's talk bling. What kind of jewelry are we talking about?
Everything. Bangles, rings, bracelets, armbands, earrings, necklaces, you name it, they had it. And the materials, wow. Gold, bronze, terracotta, beads, semi-precious stones.
Sounds like they had a taste for the finer things, and maybe a bit of a social hierarchy too, right?
Probably. Think about it. Gold and precious stones. That's got to be reserved for the elite. While the everyday folks might have worn terracotta or beads. But hey, even the everyday jewelry is super well made.
It's like each piece tells a story, doesn't it? A story about the person who wore it, their status, their beliefs, their life.
Right. And then there are the burial urns themselves. They're not just containers. They're like chapters in the story of this civilization.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned earlier that they found all these different kinds of urns. What's the story there?
Well, it's like they had a whole system for burial, depending on social status, family traditions, maybe even individual beliefs about the afterlife. They come in different sizes, shapes, colors. Some are simple, some are fancy, some are buried deep, some are closer to the surface.
Wow, it's like every detail mattered. And what about those stacked urns you mentioned? What's the deal with that?
It's a curious thing, right? It's been seen in other cultures, and there are a few possible explanations. Maybe it was about keeping families together in the afterlife, burying generations on top of each other. Or it could be about status, even in death, those on top, closer to the heavens or something.
It's fascinating to think about the beliefs that might lie behind these practices, but Adichanallur, with all its treasures, is just one piece of the puzzle. Right? We still have Sivagalai and Korkai to explore. Let's move on to Sivagalai. What makes this site stand out?
Well, Sivagalai is on the northern bank of the Porunai River, that same river that flows past Adichanallur, about 31 kilometers from Thoothukudi.
Ah, so these sites are connected not just by a river, but by a shared history, a shared culture. What did they find at Sivagalai? Anything like Adichanallur?
Some similarities for sure, especially with the pottery and the iron artifacts. But Sivagalai has its own story to tell. One of the coolest finds is a pot with a Tamil Brahmi inscription of a name, Adtan.
A name? Like a signature?
Kind of. It's more like dot evidence of literacy. They also found potsherds with similar inscriptions at other sites. And that tells us these people were using Tamil Brahmi, an ancient script, maybe as far back as the 3rd century BCE.
Whoa, so they weren't just crafting tools and weapons, they were writing too. That's a huge deal.
It is. It pushes back the timeline for literacy in South India, maybe even challenges what we thought we knew about writing in ancient India.
Talk about rewriting history. So it seems like Sivagalai was a pretty advanced place too. What else did they find there?
Oh, the pottery is incredible. Black and red ware again. But some pieces have these stunning white painted designs. Really intricate stuff.
So even though Sivagalai might not have had as much gold and bronze as Adichanallur, it seems these people were just as skilled, just as creative. What about the timeline? Are we talking the same era as Adichanallur?
Here's the exciting part. Remember that rice paddy we talked about earlier, the one they dated to 1155 BCE?
That blew my mind. Like, it suddenly made this civilization way older than anyone thought.
Right. And it suggests that Sivagalai was occupied around the same time as Adichanallur, maybe even earlier. So picture it, two major settlements along the same river, both flourishing around the same time, both showing this high level of skill and artistry.
It's like we're starting to see the scope of this civilization, its reach, its longevity, its impact on the region. But we still have Korkai to explore. This was their capital city, their main port, their connection to the rest of the world, right?
Exactly. And the Tamil Nadu State Department of Archaeology has been digging there since earlier this year. And what they found is, well, you're not going to believe this.
Hit me with it. What's got you so excited?
They've found evidence of a shell bangle making industry.
Shell bangles. So they weren't just trading exotic goods, they were making their own, too.
Exactly. They found piles of conch shells, some whole, some cut, some broken, like a snapshot of a bustling workshop.
It all ties together, doesn't it? The
Yeah.
seafaring culture, the trade connections, the skilled artisans.
Right. And this wasn't just some small-time operation. The shell bangle industry at Korkai could have been a major part of their economy, providing jobs, creating goods to trade.
Imagine the scene. The workshops buzzing with activity, the artisans shaping and polishing those shells. It must have been amazing to see.
It's a vivid image. And that's not all. They've also uncovered a truly unique structure made entirely of bricks.
A brick building, like an ancient skyscraper. What was it used for?
We don't know yet, but it's a square structure, over 2 meters tall, made with 29 courses of bricks, with a large pot right in the center.
A giant pot. What was in it? Gold, jewels, ancient secrets.
Too early to say. But it's definitely intriguing. And the way this whole structure is built, the precision of the brickwork, the carefully constructed foundation, it's clear they knew what they were doing.
They were master builders, that's for sure. What else did they find in this area?
Well, right next to this brick structure, they found a filtering pipe, also made of brick.
A filtering pipe. So they were thinking about water management, sanitation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It shows a level of sophistication that you don't always see in ancient civilizations. And get this, they found potsherds near the pipe that seemed to be from the Western world.
Wait, hold on. Potsherds from the West, like from Rome, Greece.
That's what it looks like. It just adds to the mystery of Korkai and confirms that this civilization was connected to a much wider world.
This is incredible. Shell bangles, a mysterious brick structure, a giant pot, a filtering pipe, and potsherds from the West, all in one area. Korkai is like a time capsule just waiting to be opened.
It's amazing, isn't it? And this is just the beginning. The excavations are still ongoing. Who knows what other wonders they'll uncover?
I can't wait to find out. But before we get too carried away with all the exciting details, I think it's time to step back and consider what all this means. What do these discoveries tell us about the significance of the Porunai River civilization? How do they change our understanding of ancient India and its place in the world?
That's a great question. And that's exactly what we'll explore when we come back. Welcome back. Before we jump into Korkai, I thought, maybe we could circle back to Adichanallur for a sec. Remember those bronze artifacts?
Oh yeah, those bowls, plates, all that stuff. You were saying how bronze was like a super special material back then.
Exactly. It wasn't easy to make. It took real skill. So finding all these bronze objects at Adichanallur, well, it kind of shows you how advanced these people were.
It's like having a fancy car today, right? A status symbol. So give me the details.
Yep.
What did these bronze things look like? Were they just basic stuff or did they get fancy with it?
Oh, they got pretty fancy. Like imagine these beautifully made bowls and plates, maybe used for special dinners or even rituals. Some of them even had handles and decorations and stuff.
Wow, I can practically see them now. Gleaming bronze being used for everyday life, but also, like you said, special occasions. Did they find any bronze tools or weapons?
That's the thing. Unlike the iron stuff, which was mostly tools and weapons, the bronze seems to be all domestic. No weapons, no tools. It's like they saved bronze for fancier things.
Interesting. So iron was for work, but bronze was for elevating things, I guess.
Yeah.
Making them more beautiful.
Yeah, like they cared about practicality, but also about having nice things. Maybe it was even a way of showing off their wealth.
Totally. And what about those female figurines we talked about earlier? Any bronze ones?
Actually, yeah. Some of the most interesting ones are made of bronze. And the cool thing is they kind of look like figurines from the Indus Valley civilization.
Wow. That connection just blows my mind. Two totally different places, thousands of miles apart, but with these similar artistic styles. It makes you wonder about how connected those ancient cultures really were.
Right. And what makes these bronze figurines even cooler is that some of them are wearing little bronze ornaments.
Just like the real jewelry they found, it's like those figurines are tiny reflections of their own society. Do we have any idea what those figures meant to them? Were they like goddesses? Or fertility symbols? Or just pretty decorations?
It's hard to say for sure, but the fact that they're buried with these people alongside other valuable stuff makes you think they were pretty important. Maybe they had something to do with their beliefs about the afterlife.
It's so cool to think about, like trying to decode these ancient beliefs by looking at these little objects. It's like a puzzle. But let's move on to the pottery. You were saying earlier that their pottery style was really unique.
Oh, absolutely. Mostly black and redware. Super distinctive. They were masters at this technique.
I bet. Those two colors together, it's really striking. How did they even do that? Create both colors on the same pot?
Well, it all comes down to the firing process. They would control the oxygen flow in the kiln super carefully, so some parts of the pot would get lots of oxygen and turn red, while other parts would stay black.
Wow, that sounds complicated. Like they really knew their stuff. And did they just leave them plain or did they add decorations?
Oh, they definitely decorated them. Some pots have these carved designs, geometric patterns, even extra stuff stuck on. And they use all kinds of tools to add different textures, like combs and shells. Pretty creative.
So they weren't just about function, they wanted their pottery to be beautiful too. It sounds like a really sophisticated style. Did they find any complete pots or was it mostly just pieces?
Both, actually. They found whole pots, which is amazing because you can really see the shape and the decoration. But even the little pieces, the shards, those can tell us a lot too.
I guess every piece tells a story, huh? Like a little clue about these people and their lives. Speaking of stories, what about those animal figurines you were talking about? They found all kinds of animals, right?
Yeah. It's like they were recreating their world in miniature. Domesticated animals like buffalo, goats, cows, and wild ones too. Tigers, elephants, deer.
It's like they were paying tribute to the creatures that surrounded them. Did they try to make them look super realistic, or was it more symbolic?
It kind of depended. Some were pretty realistic, with all the anatomical details. But others were more stylized, more about capturing the spirit of the animal, I guess.
Like those cave paintings, where the meaning was more important than being perfectly lifelike. What do you think they used those figurines for? Toys? Religious offerings?
Tough to say for sure. Maybe they were all of those things. Maybe they had a spiritual meaning, or maybe they were just little decorations for their homes. Who knows? But let's move on to the bling. We were talking about all the amazing jewelry they found.
Oh yeah, give me all the sparkly details. What kind of jewelry did they have?
Seriously, they had it all. Bangles, rings, bracelets, necklaces, you name it. And the materials they used were so diverse. Gold, bronze, terracotta, beads, even precious stones.
They clearly had a sense of style, and all that variety suggests maybe different social classes, like only the rich people could afford the gold and jewels, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It tells you a lot about their society. Not everyone was equal, clearly. Some people had more wealth, more status, and they showed it off through their jewelry. But it's interesting, even the simpler jewelry, the stuff made from terracotta or beads, it's still beautifully made.
It's like everyone wanted to look their best no matter their social standing. And each piece of jewelry, it's like a little window into someone's life, isn't it?
Totally. And let's not forget about the burial urns themselves. They're not just containers. They're like pieces of art, and they tell us a lot about these people.
Oh yeah, we were talking about how they found all these different kinds of urns, simple ones, fancy ones, buried at different depths. What was all that about?
Well, it seems like their burial practices weren't like one size fits all. There was room for individual expression, for different family traditions, and maybe even different beliefs about the afterlife. And remember those stacked urns we talked about?
Oh yeah, that was so weird. What do you think that meant?
It's a real head scratcher, isn't it? But it's been seen in other ancient cultures. Maybe they believed in keeping families together, even in death. Or maybe it was a way of showing respect for ancestors. Who knows? But it shows you how complex their beliefs must have been.
Right. And we're just talking about one site here, Adichanallur. Imagine what we could learn from all the other burial sites along the Porunai River.
It's mind-blowing. And speaking of mind-blowing, let's finally move on to Korkai. This was their capital city, their main port, the place where they connected with the rest of the world.
I'm ready. Give me all the juicy details about Korkai. What did they find there?
Oh, Korkai is a whole other level of amazing. It's like stepping into a time machine.
Okay, deep divers, we're back. And I am ready to hear more about Korkai. Shell bangles, a mysterious brick structure, potsherds from who knows where. It's like an ancient puzzle just waiting to be solved.
Right. And the best part is, they're still digging. The Tamil Nadu government is even building a whole new museum dedicated to the Porunai River civilization in Tirunelveli.
Whoa, a whole museum. That's amazing. They're really going all out to showcase these discoveries, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be state-of-the-art with artifacts from all the sites we've been talking about. Adichanallur, Sivagalai, Korkai, the whole shebang.
So people can actually go and see these incredible objects up close. Those gold diadems, those bronze bowls, those mysterious figurines. I can't even imagine.
I know. They're even planning interactive exhibits and stuff. They want to make it a total immersion experience, you know, not just looking at artifacts in glass cases, but actually learning about the people who made them, their lives, their beliefs.
It'll be like stepping back in time. I'm already planning my trip. But before we go too far down that road, let's talk about the research itself. You mentioned earlier that they're using all these fancy scientific techniques to analyze the artifacts.
Oh yeah, they're going all out. They want to answer some big questions like, how far did those trade routes really extend? Where were these people getting their raw materials from? What were they trading?
It's like a global treasure hunt. And remember, we already have some clues, like those Western potsherds they found at Korkai.
Exactly. Those potsherds are like pieces of a puzzle that connect this civilization to the wider world. And the scientific analysis can help us figure out where those pieces fit.
So what other mysteries are they hoping to solve?
Well, they're also really interested in understanding the social structure of this civilization. Like, how was society organized? Who had power? What were their family structures like? And what about their religious beliefs? What did they believe about life and death?
Wow, big questions. And all that from just looking at these objects.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Each artifact, each inscription, is a little clue that helps us understand these people and their world.
It just shows you that history is never really over, is it? There's always more to discover, more to learn, more to understand.
Exactly. The Porunai River civilization is proof that history is full of surprises. And it reminds us that these ancient cultures were far more connected, far more sophisticated than we often give them credit for.
Right. This wasn't just some isolated group of people living by a river. They were connected to the world. They were trading with distant lands. They were creating beautiful art and sophisticated technology.
Absolutely. They were shaping the world around them just like we are today. And their story is still unfolding.
That's what makes it so exciting. And for our listeners who want to learn more, we've included links to articles, research papers, and information about that new Porunai Museum in the show notes. Go check it out.
There's a whole world waiting to be discovered.
Well, deep divers, we've reached the end of our journey along the Porunai River. But the exploration doesn't have to stop here. Keep digging, keep questioning, keep discovering. Until next time, happy diving!